to the queue here. So here you can see quick information about the patient. So you can see the patient's name, their mobile number if you have one at the time of scheduling them, and email address, again, if you have that at the time of scheduling. We get this information, patient engagement gets this information from case coordination. So case coordination will create the case for the patient, and they will pass that on to patient engagement, and we will show that here. Again, you can also see if this patient is a returning patient. You can see the date of service and time for the patient, the physician, consent status. So a big piece of patient engagement is the texting portion, which we will cover in a different live webinar. But consent status is whether or not the patient has consented to receiving text messages. And that is part of the customization your facility can set up as well. So this is indicating that the patient has in fact consented to receiving text messages for your facility. You have the pre-admission status, which I've briefly reviewed with our filters here, but as you can see, these statuses are clear indications of where that patient is in completing their form. Either they've not started it, which is incomplete, they've completed it, and it's this green color, stands out for you. You can see if there needs review, meaning that patient needs to review their form again. And then, of course, if there was in progress, that would be showing here as well. You have your flag column. So here you can see these two records show 3 different flags. If you recall, during the pre-assessment setup, there's different question types that you can set up their responses as flags. So this indicates that this patient answered 3 questions that were set up as flags. So it just shows you that there are 3 things that you really need to pay attention to for that patient's health history. Follow-up status. So this is more of a manual use column for you to keep track of your communication with the patient. You can indicate whether you've attempted to call the patient, texted the patient, emailed the patient, of course. And then ultimately, if there's no further follow-up needed for that patient, you can just go ahead and select follow-up done, and that would show there. And then, of course, if you wanted to remove that follow-up, you can hit the X. If the patient's completed their form, the follow-up status options will no longer appear because the objective has been completed. The patient has completed their form. So therefore, we show survey completed under this column. Activities. So we log any action that your users take with any given form. So under this activities, you can see the user's initials. So this is my user, and the follow-up activity that was taken, or the actions that I've taken with this record. So just to give a couple examples here, I changed that follow-up status and it logged it right there with the date and time. And then, of course, you can see that I've changed it to follow-up done, and then I removed that follow-up status as well. If I took additional actions with this form, of course, this follow-up activity would increase in length as I took more actions. And would change too. If a different user came in here after me and made an action, it would log that person's name as well as the date and time of the action that they took. And then finally, from your queue, you have several different actions available for any patient record. And some you have, and some for others you don't. So you can see here, this record has less actions available than, let's say, the one above it. And that's because this record is completed. The patient completed their form. Therefore, what's taken away here is the ability to resend that survey link to the patient. There's no need because the patient has completed their form, and therefore that button is taken away. But if the patient had not completed their form, you would have the ability to select this resend survey button. When I select that, it's going to ask how you would like to resend the survey to the patient. If you have a cell phone and an email address available, it would give you the option to send a text message as well as send an email. If you only have one or the other, it's only going to give you the available option.